Have you ever wondered if a home could change an entire community? A house is not just a place to live, it can be the starting point for monumental changes where biases and prejudices are challenged. But can one person confront the rigid rules of a community and reshape them from the inside? When LeBron James, the basketball legend, decided to buy a mansion in Oaked Estates, one of Los Angeles' most exclusive neighborhoods, many saw it as just another typical move for a superstar. But when complaint letters started pouring in, criticizing everything from his outdoor lighting to the height of his hedges, it became clear that something much deeper was at play. Were these complaints simply about rules, or was there something more hidden beneath the surface? What started as a battle over minor details soon turned into a larger struggle, not just for LeBron, but for the community he had chosen to call home. So, what will LeBron do? And could this fight be about more than just garden lights, but about creating a more inclusive and fair future for everyone? The California sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over Oaked Estates, one of Los Angeles' most exclusive gated communities. The neighborhood was known for its manicured lawns, tree-lined streets, homes that looked more like boutique hotels than residences. It was the kind of place where silence reigned, broken only by the occasional chirping of birds or the hum of luxury cars pulling into marble-paved driveways. When LeBron James, NBA legend and cultural icon, purchased a sprawling estate in Oaked Estates, it sent ripples through the neighborhood. His 15,000-feet mansion boasted a private basketball court, a state-of-the-art gym, and an infinity pool with a view that seemed to stretch to the Pacific Ocean. For some, his presence elevated the prestige of Oaked. For others, however, it was a disruption, a break in the unwritten code of exclusivity that the community had long protected. It was a Monday morning when the first complaint arrived. LeBron was in his home gym, sweating through a set of deadlifts, when Rachel walked in with an envelope. "LeBron, you've got a letter from the Homeowners Association," she said, handing it to him. With a raised brow, LeBron wiped his face with a towel and opened the envelope, his expression shifting from curiosity to amusement as he read it. "Dear Mr. J. James," he began aloud, "it has come to our attention that the outdoor lighting on your property exceeds the brightness levels permitted by the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Association. Kindly adjust the lighting to comply with community standards within 7 days." He let out a short laugh. "Outdoor lights? They're complaining about my lights." Rachel smiled, but gave him a look. "You know how these places are. People love their rules. It's not even that bright, but fine, I'll have someone look at it." LeBron instructed his property manager to dim the light slightly, thinking it would resolve the issue. He didn't expect that this would be the first of many letters. Over the next few weeks, the letters became more frequent and increasingly petty. "Your front lawn has uneven patches of grass. Please address this to maintain community standards. The sound of basketballs on your outdoor court has been reported as disruptive. Your security team's vehicles are not in compliance with the neighborhood's aesthetic guidelines." LeBron sat in his study reading through the latest batch of complaints with a growing sense of frustration. Each letter felt like a slap in the face, a message that said, "You don't belong here." Rachel joined in, placing a cup of tea on the desk. "Another one?" she asked, gesturing to the stack of letters. "3 more," he said, shaking his head. "This one's about the height of the hedges." "Seriously, the hedges?" Rachel sat down across from him, her expression thoughtful. "Brun, I think this is more than just nitpicking. It feels targeted." "You're saying it's about me?" LeBron said, leaning back in his chair. "About you, about us, about who we are," Rachel replied. "You know what this is?" LeBron nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. "This wasn't about lights or grass, it was about prejudice dressed up as concern for community standards." Determined to get to the bottom of it, LeBron asked his team to discreetly investigate the source of the complaints. A friendly neighbor confirmed what he had already begun to suspect. Charles Donovan, a retired attorney, longtime Oaked resident, was behind most of the grievances. "Donovan's got a lot of sway in the association," the neighbor explained. "He's been saying things in meetings, stuff about preserving the culture of the neighborhood. It's all very coded." LeBron had heard this kind of language before. It wasn't new from the time he was a kid growing up in a can to his years as an NB, a superstar. He had encountered people who masked their biases behind thinly veiled politeness, but now it was happening in the place he called home. "Thanks for letting me know," LeBron said to the neighbor. "I owe you one. You don't owe me anything," the neighbor replied. "I'm just sorry you're dealing with this." A week later, LeBron received an email notifying residents of the next Oaked Neighborhood Association and a meeting. It was the perfect opportunity to address the issue head-on. He decided he would attend. When Rachel heard about his plan, she hesitated. "Ah, you sure about this? These people aren't used to being called out." "That's exactly why I need to go," LeBron said. "If I let this slide, it's not just about me anymore. It's about anyone who comes after me, they need to know this isn't okay. The Oaked community center was unusually crowded on the night of the meeting. Word had spread that LeBron James would be attending, and curiosity brought out even the most apathetic residents. Charles Whitman stood at the front of the room, his stern face framed by wire-rimmed glasses. He called the meeting to order, his voice sharp and authoritative. Good evening, everyone. We have several items on the agenda tonight, including— LeBron raised his hand. I'd like to speak first, if that's all right. Whitman frowned. This isn't the time for— I think it is, LeBron said, stepping forward. The room fell silent. I've received more complaint letters in the past month than I've received fan mail in my rookie year. He began, eliciting a few chuckles. But what's been happening here isn't funny. It's not about lights or lawns. It's about something deeper. He held up one of the letters. When you send me this, what you're really saying is you don't belong here. And let's be honest, we all know why the room was still. Donovan's face darkened, but he said nothing. LeBron continued, this community talks a lot about standards and culture, but whose standards, whose culture? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like those words are being used to exclude. Whitman finally spoke, his voice tight. Mr. James, these rules are in place for everyone. This isn't about you personally. LeBron turned to him, his gaze steady. If these rules apply to everyone, why are they being enforced so aggressively now? Why wasn't the last owner of my house getting letters about the brightness of their lights? A younger resident, Sophia Morgan, stood up. He's right. I've lived here for 5 years and I've never seen this level of enforcement. Another neighbor chimed in. LeBron's presence has put us on the map. My kids are thrilled to have him here. Why are we pushing him away? Donovan raised his hand, trying to regain control. This is about maintaining the character of the neighborhood. LeBron stepped closer. What character is that, Mr. Whitman? One that doesn't include people like me. By the end of the meeting, the room was buzzing with conversation. LeBron's words had struck a chord with many residents, sparking a broader discussion about bias and inclusivity. The OA announced it would conduct a review of its policies to ensure they were being applied fairly. Charles Whitman, facing mounting pressure, quietly resigned from his position as head of the association. LeBron, meanwhile, took steps to foster unity in the community. He hosted an open house at his estate, inviting all his neighbors to tour the property, shoot hoops on his court, and share a barbecue dinner. Children played on the court, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood, while adults mingled and talked about what kind of community they wanted to build. It's not about proving I belong here, LeBron said during the event. It's about making this a place where everyone can feel welcome. The changes in Oaked Estates didn't happen overnight, but the seeds of transformation had been planted, but it was clear that real change would take time. The initial spark of discussion, ignited by LeBron's open confrontation of the HOA's biased practices, began to spread like wildfire through the Oaked Estates community. Neighbors who had once kept their thoughts to themselves now gathered in small groups, holding more open discussions about inclusivity and diversity. At first, these conversations were cautious, almost tentative. But as the days passed, they grew more confident, more robust. People began to speak out, sharing their own experiences of feeling excluded or marginalized within the walls of the neighbor. For many, this newfound openness was liberating. They spoke of their struggles, their desire for a community that embraced everyone regardless of background, wealth, or status. It wasn't just about a few complaints or minor violations anymore. It was about something bigger, something that had always been present but rarely addressed. The deeply ingrained biases that had shaped the neighborhood for years. And it wasn't just the residents who were speaking up. The HOA, under growing pressure, began to listen. They started to understand that Oaked Estates' reputation for exclusivity had come at a cost, one that had left many people feeling alienated. In response to the swelling chorus of voices calling for change, the Oaked Estates Homeowners Association took swift action. They reviewed their policies and began implementing new guidelines designed to prevent discriminatory practices and ensure that all residents, regardless of their background, were treated fairly. The days of arbitrary enforcement where rules were selectively applied to certain individuals were over. The association's new leadership, under pressure from both residents and the media, made it clear that they would no longer tolerate a culture of exclusion. There was a renewed sense of accountability, and for the first time in years, the association began to make real, meaningful changes to reflect the diverse fabric of the community. For LeBron, this experience was a poignant reminder of the power of speaking out, of standing up for what's right even when the road is difficult and the opposition is fierce. Change doesn't come easy, he told a reporter months later, his voice steady with conviction. There are always people who resist, who want things to stay the same because it's comfortable for them. But it's worth fighting for on the court and off. He paused for a moment, reflecting on how far he had come since that first letter from the Hoa and how much further the community still had to go. LeBron didn't just make a home in Oak Estates, he made a difference. His decision to challenge the status quo had set in motion a process that would reshape the entire neighborhood. The changes weren't just about rules and regulations, they were about fostering a culture of respect, understanding, and inclusivity. Through his actions, LeBron had shown that it wasn't enough to simply be present in a community, you had to actively contribute to its growth and its future. In doing so, he left a legacy that went far beyond basketball. The impact of his efforts rippled outward, touching not just the residents of Oak Estates, but also the broader Los Angeles community. His commitment to justice, equality, and unity became a model for others to follow. As a result, Oak Estates began to transform into a place where everyone truly had a stake in the neighborhood, where diversity was celebrated rather than feared, and where differences were seen as strengths, not weaknesses. Months after the meeting, when the dust had settled and the changes were starting to take root, LeBron could still feel the difference. As he walked through the neighborhood, greeting neighbors with a smile, he noticed something he hadn't seen before: genuine connections. People waved to each other across driveways, stopped to chat about their kids, their pets, their gardens. The walls that had once divided them both literally and metaphorically were beginning to crumble. People were no longer afraid to stand up for each other. They were beginning to see that when one person succeeds, everyone succeeds. And for LeBron, that was the true victory, not just the changes to the Hoa rules, not just the victory over prejudice, but the sense of shared purpose that began to define Oak Estates. The community had been remade, not by top-down mandates, but by the collective will of its residents, inspired by the courage of one man who refused to let bias go unchecked. For years to come, LeBron James' story would be a part of Oak Estates' history, woven into its identity. The mansion that had once stood as a symbol of wealth and celebrity became a beacon of hope, a reminder of what a community could accomplish when it came together. And as the sun set on another warm evening in Oak Estates, LeBron would stand on his balcony, looking out over the neighborhood he had helped transform, knowing that his efforts had created something far more valuable than luxury, a place where people could belong just as they were.